And Andrew will be the presenter today. And this is Fred. I'm the president of Jewish Climate Action Network, and welcome everybody. So if you wouldn't mind, please just do the, feel free to rename. After your name, just put a comma if you can, and your congregation, town, and state, please. I think we have people from quite a variety of locales.
I know, that's exciting.
So, and we'll see which of them show up. I mean, there's a difference between the people who register and the people who show up, so you never know. In any case, I put this on first and last because this is our primary mode. We are Jewish Climate Action Network, and we want to emphasize the action. So empowerment, empowerment, empowerment to you and to everyone you interact with. So I just want to give a quick introduction. Jewish Climate Action Network has 3 active pillars these days: clergy, advocacy, decarbonizing, and they sound like 3 separate words that shouldn't go in the same sentence, but that's the way it is. So we have a group, an active group within each, a council, a clergy council, a tech council, and the group called Legs and Regs for Legislation and Regulation. So among those 3, we are working today in decarbonizing. Oh, and I'm sorry, before I go into what we're doing today. So I just want to, you'll be seeing this more publicity about next week's program. It's during Hanukkah, and it is an all of JCAN program, meaning all 3 of those pillars are pulling, our pillars are pulling together for this. This is not exactly decarbonization, but it is a particular critical, some say crisis, a critical moment, some say crisis that we're facing this winter. All right, but today we're dealing with decarbonization. This is one of our 3, the one on the right is the one we're in today, the benchmarking webinar. It's one of our 3 core workshops. We cycle around between the 3. Somebody from your congregation should attend one of each of these. In other words, you should have representation at each of these. And then we also have programs. The workshops continue, but the programs, these were generally different. You interact with these not through workshops per se, but heat pumps, solar, both of those, solar for synagogues, heat pumps in general, and mass energized for all congregations. It's a specifically for Massachusetts program, but it's great to learn about wherever you are. So that's sort of an overview of our pillars, 3 pillars, this one being decarbonization. We have workshops and programs. This is the benchmarking workshop. Okay. This is a little bit more about JCAN's reach in time and in geography. And if anybody is so inclined, we would very much appreciate clicking along to make a donation. We're almost all volunteer organization, and we appreciate any contributions, but this is just Fred speaking as president. We much, much more appreciate your engagement as activists. So I consider anybody that shows up at any Jewish Climate Action Network program to be a Jewish climate activist. So yasher koach to what you do. And I'm going to present 2 slides, 2 or 3 slides about the context of decarbonizing today. The context of decarbonizing today. More and more people are adopting new technology, meaning decarbonizing. And everybody know what those are? Outside of, in households, it's electric vehicles, it's heat pump heating, if you're in a heating dominated climate, and solar on the roof. Those are the 3 big decarbonizing measures. Okay, again, context. Societal change happens, in other words, moving towards these decarbonizing measures happens in incremental stages, always. It always goes that way. In the meantime, widespread adoption must accelerate massively today. and enormous community organizing is necessary and can be effective. So you are agents of change. Thank you very much. You are agents of change. And the specific change that is absolutely necessary is 50% by 2030. We are not starting from zero. We are on this path somewhere in that big, broad red arrow area, and we must be going up that steep slope. And how we get to that steep slope is all about our various workshops and programs. Today is about benchmarking at the synagogue. But this is the general statement. Decarbonization must happen in these next 7 years, which is a Shemitah cycle. And it can only happen with massive acceleration. And here's the key: the strategies to achieve emissions reductions in this decade necessitate influencing millions of small transitions over the next 10 years. That's all those electric cars, all those heat pumps in every single household and facility. And this statement was written 2 years ago. So we have 8 years left. And I come back to, it's not beyond you. And Andrew is now going to show us, how can that be?
How can that be?
He's going to make you realize what step, or teach you the steps to go through to get the benchmarking done at your congregation. So that's the basics about JCAN. I will be quiet until Andrew says otherwise. And thank you all for being here, and thank you for what you do.
Hello, all. My name is Andrew Webster. I'm a member of the JCAN-MA Tech Council. I'm a member at the Jewish community of Amherst and a portion of the Green Team there, working with our synagogue to decarbonize operations at the synagogue. By day, I'm an energy geek professionally, and I work on low carbon houses and facilities as an architect. Can everyone hear me okay? I can see you all nodding thumbs. Thank you so much. I assume by now in late COVID era, if I can be so bold as to assert that, we're familiar with Zoom is pretty good. Typically, we'll have cameras on and mics off. If you have a comment, though, please feel free to wave or bang on the camera, or put a comment in the chat, or use the little hand raising button. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that too. And Fred's mostly right, except he's a little bit wrong. I'm not going to teach you everything about how to benchmark your synagogue. Our chief goal is to get you on the way. We understand this process to be a convoluted one sometimes. Sometimes you're going to hit a stumbling block. You're always going to come up against a thing that you haven't done before and that you may not understand how to do yet. And our intent today is to get you teed up on the starting line and then give you a nudge forward and give you the tools to proceed. And we know that you're not going to make it all the way, unless you're miraculous. I don't know. You're unlikely to get all the way to the end without any further assistance. And that's what we're here for. That's what Tech Council is for. I will put my email address in the chat right now. It's andrew@studio-webster.com. And when you get to your stutter point and you've gotten as far as you can get without banging your head against the wall, that's when you should write me an email. Reach out. I have great confidence that we can get you past whatever trouble you seem to have come up against. We've done this dozens of times before. I used to teach architectural students at the Boston Architectural College how to do hourly peak heat loss calculations on their building or their school. It can always get you through it. I have full confidence that you can pull this off. It is not beyond you, and we're here to give you the tools to get it done. I'm going to also upload to the chat, if I think I can do this, the sheet that we're going to be using today. We're going to be using a simple, a complicated spreadsheet whose use should be very simple for you. Fred and others and I have worked on making this usable. And we'll see one more time how it is. I'm gonna put it in the chat, I think. No, doesn't like to do that. That's right, I forgot I can't drop into the chat. If you go to the other way to get this sheet is to go to the JCAN-MA's webpage. And at the bottom, I'm going to put the address of that into the chat. Oh, there we go. Thea beat me to it. There's a link now in the chat. If you can all see the chat sidebar on your Zoom, and it's Zoom host, which is Thea has put a link in there. It says jewishclimate.org/how-to-benchmark HTML. If you go to that page, that will let you download your own version of this spreadsheet that we're going to be using. You can do it later, you can do it now, and you can play along if you like. As I'm walking us through that spreadsheet today, I'm just going to give you basic familiarity with it so you feel confident enough that you can jump in and begin the detailed work that is benchmarking your own synagogue. I'm going to share the screen now, and this is the JCAN-MA webpage that Thea sent us the link to. Down here at the bottom, we can see View MIPL-JCAN Carbon Calculator. That's MIPL is Mass Interfaith Power and Light. They were the originators of this spreadsheet, and JCAN-MA Tech Council has adapted it for use outside of Massachusetts, but we do want to say thanks to them for that original pioneering work. Houses of worship all over Massachusetts have begun to use this calculator to assess their carbon consumption in the building. If we click on that link, I'm going to do it. It takes us into a spreadsheet on the internet via Google. Now, if you're not familiar with Google spreadsheets, here's one thing that you should learn. If we click on File, it gives you this menu. Can you all see that okay? And then down here is Download, and there's a download, and it gets this little drop-down menu. You can pick one of these ways to download it. I'd recommend you pick Microsoft Excel or Open Document as a interactive way to use it. If you download it as a PDF, it's going to show it as a PDF. You won't be able to click on anything or change anything. But download it as an Excel. You click there, and it does, and then it downloads it to the place that you download things to. Does that make sense? Is that something that's the reason why I see some furrowed eyebrows? Let me know. I'm going to start up with it, but let me know if that provides you trouble. We can begin our Tech Council instance right now.
I put the instructions in the chat also.
Oh, I see that. Thank you so much, Thea. All right, I'm going to go back out to my own local pages. I have, in fact, downloaded it here, and let's see, where is my version? Numbers. Let's share my numbers page. I'm a Mac person, so I'm using it in numbers, and I'm going to go back to the very beginning. There are tabs in my version. My tabs are all on the top. If you're in Excel, they typically show up along the bottom. It's a giant spreadsheet. It has multiple tabs in it. I'm going to make it as big. Is that big enough to read out there? Can you see those enough to play along? Yes, good. Okay. I think before we get, okay, you have all of your synagogues in your thing. Fred, are you keeping track of what folks have showed up and where they're from? And
I do, and if I could just say one more time for those who haven't yet done that, if you could please put your name and then comma and your congregation or community if you have one. If you don't, that's fine, and then comma town and state. Thank you.
Okay, let's dig into the starting points of the spreadsheet. Tab number 1 is this one, and it says instructions on it. So when you're ready to begin, you start right there. Start with 1 and start with instructions. And what we've done is we tried to simplify this to the point where it's clear. and obvious. Again, forgive us. You will hit a snag somewhere along the way. But I'll talk you through the ideas of the spreadsheet now, and we'll see if we can make it clear to you. Number one, type your house of worship's name and location here. This is a cell that populates throughout the rest of the sheet. So I'm going to type in here the JCA. That is my home synagogue. And now that's going to show up on other pages throughout here. And it's just, that's the first moment of branding. And now you can take a bow because you've accomplished the first one of 6 steps. We're underway. We're not nearly a 6th done, but we're getting there. You've begun the action of Jewish climate action. Number 2 says, enter the house of worship in square feet. Now, this has a couple of pieces to it. Why do we want to know the size of your house of worship? Because what we're going to do is calculate an energy use intensity for your building. How big your building is, how much energy is in it. We're going to divide one number by the other and say how much energy per square foot, because we're in the United States, and we're stuck with the imperial system. But this is one of the metrics that we're going to develop, and we're going to use that to compare our synagogue to other houses of worship in our climate region or in our climate zone, according to EPA or the Department of Energy. And that's going to tell us how well we're doing with regards to other buildings of the same type in the same climate area with the same kind of weather. It's just a little bit of a competitive streak to know whether we're doing great. If we used 0 energy per 1,000,000 square feet, we'd be doing wonderful. In the meantime, we're going to compare. We don't have to get all the way to nothing to make a real important steps in reducing our carbon impact. So we're going to put the size of your house of worship in here. Now the question is, how do I know how big my synagogue is? You don't need to go running around the temple with a tape measure. There are a couple of ways you might find this out. I will confess, I got lucky. We had plans drawn up for a major addition to the synagogue about 12 years ago. And so we had plans. I could go look at the plans, and on the plans was printed a number that said 8,360 square feet. Another place you might do this, and here's another time when we can talk about the mechanics of the sheet. Over here in this column K, tips to simplify, there's a number 1. Down here at the bottom is a footnote, tips to simplify, number 1. It can often be difficult to pin down the square feet. Recruit allies, ask around as you go. A common place to find the square footage of any building is in your town tax assessor records. The tax assessor records are public information. They are possibly, but not necessarily, available via the internet at your town. A lot of the assessor maps will usually list those. In Amherst, Massachusetts, I can see the tax cards for every building in the town online. It's a little bit of a sleuthing to be done. There's some searching and detective work, but you might be able to find that strictly in an online web search. You also might call the assessor's office and say, hi, I'm calling from Temple Beth Israel. I'm trying to do some decarbonizing work at our synagogue, and can you tell me the square footage of my building? This is one of those situations where sometimes a quick phone call to the relevant authority will help you out. They may say, well, I'm not authorized to give you that information, and you have to do a little bit of homework to say, well, I need to get our chief admin on the phone because she's the one on the agency list, and she's the one that gets this information. Whatever it takes, these are little bits of interpersonal homework that you can do. The same may come true when you go to get utility data. Who has all the utility data for your temple? Well, it could be in a filing cabinet in the office, and it might have been lost in a reshuffle last year. You don't know until you go ask. So, go talk to the people in the synagogue that have access to that information. If they don't have it, the one agency that certainly does have that information will be the utility company that sells you this. And if you call them, they may say you used 48,000 kilowatt hours last year. They may say, we're not authorized to give you that information. Call your admin back at the office and have them call in and ask for it. It may take a little bit of work on your part, but it's digging ditches. You can spend a little time on the phone or on the internet to try and dig up this information. That's one of your footnotes. Number one, enter a size of house of worship. You may have to sneak around to figure out where that information comes from, but I know it exists out there. I know you can find it. And then you get to pat yourself on the back because you're done with number two. Any questions yet? Nothing yet. All right.
Just
I'm
say,
waiting.
I'll just kibitz that if people understand these first two items, they're the hardest part. They are.
It's true. The rest is a little more tedious, but this can be the hardest part.
Linda has a question.
Linda, go ahead.
Hi. One of the issues, and we're just starting on this.
Great.
With the green team. One of the issues is that if you go back 2 years, you're talking about a building that was hardly used. So our utility bills are not representative of what we did, and it's not clear that we can go back 4 years or 5 years. It's been recommended that when you're doing this, that you try and look at 2018 and 2019. Mm-hmm. If you can get those data as opposed to 2020, 2021.
Absolutely. It'll give you I think whatever you can do is great. I would love to see data from normal times that told us what the synagogue was usually using during regular days. And we have had those stutter steps in the last couple of years where your building may have had wildly different usage from what you're used to. It's not important. I mean it's helpful to see. It actually may give you more confidence and a moral boost to be able to see progress over time in a very linear fashion. But seeing that progress over time is not critical to the task at hand. We need 1 year of data. It could be 2022. It could be 2023. We need to see what you're using this year. Oh, we have a place in the spreadsheet. You can see tab 3 called charts, and that's going to take the data, any data that you can input from history, and lay it out in a chart. And you'd love to see consume, 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 reduce, 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 reduce as a spiritual comfort, to know the work that you were doing. I can see it in a chart. It's a thing you can go show to a presentation. You can take it to the board. You can take it to the rabbi and say, look, what we have done so far. We're already made 20% reductions. What we need is a little kick from you to get us over to 40% reductions. Can you join in? It's a moral boost to be able to see that, but it's not critical to the real meat of the work at hand. So I hear you on that, and get what you can. Yeah, the COVID thing is funny. We also, of course, right before COVID, we had a building change at the JCA where it's a repurposed Congregationalist church, and we tore the chimney off, the steeple off, and rebuilt it. And that happened to be like a year where the second story was open to the outside for half of the fall or something. So we blew all of this heating energy out through the ceiling, and that wasn't a representative year either. So we have data that kind of all over the map, but in the charts, we tried to give you a little ability to note that. There's little tags we can drag into place on the charts to say, this was the year we ripped the steeple off. This was the year we changed to all LED lighting. This was the year we replaced the oil boiler with electric-based heat pump heating and cooling. You can kind of see how that goes. Let me see if I can show you an example of that. We have a sample grid here. Oh, and we don't have the captions on this one. What have I done with the captions? But you can see, here's the starting data. This template started in 2014 to track these things. And then we begin to see, this is a very reassuring energy chart to me. Here, carbon emissions, down, 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 down. I mean, from a peak of, in here, what are we showing, 96 tons of carbon emitted by that building to the point where we're down in here in 2020. We're in the 39 tons. We've reduced, they reduced through the work that they did at this temple, they reduced their carbon consumption or carbon emissions by nearly 60%. What a great thing to be able to show and say, look, we are doing the work, and we've begun to make real progress here. We added renewable energy in 2020, and suddenly we're making great strides. I think these are the great kind of stories. This is the year, Linda says, this is the year our HVAC system died. Saved a lot of, yeah, that does save a lot of money if you're not running HVAC. I'm in a situation now where I'm having a meeting with our new executive director, our interim executive director, and she's got an eye on a couple of heating systems in the building that are feeling like they're failing or they're starting to wobble a little bit. Part of your benchmarking process to say, where are we now? What do we understand the energy consumption of our building to have been? And it helps us when we see in charts like these, we can see the red bars versus the blue bars. This temple's done a lot of work on its blue bars. Its red bars, which is the gas energy, which is likely to be heating energy and cooking energy in a kitchen if you have one. That energy has begun to come down some, but that's now the major component of the energy that they're, the carbon that they're emitting. And so that, in the hands of your green team, looks like the place that I would start action next. I can see all this pink bar still. What are we going to do that? Oh, our gas furnace is failing. Let's convert that to an electric heat pump. Let's get that onto electricity, and then we're going to green our electricity, and we're going to reduce our carbon even further. So what we're doing is a snapshot over, a series of snapshots over time. How is our carbon being emitted as it relates to this building? And the purpose is action. What are we going to do to make that profile better and better and better over time? When we have opportunities like the HVAC system is dying, now is our chance. That's an inflection point where we can take this information and say, we see that the next most important thing to do in this synagogue's life is to convert its gas heating to electric heating. And so these are the tools that we're trying to give you the baselines so you can understand where you are and where you have been, and then give you the ability to project forward where you want to be. And that's part of the other webinar about goal setting for your synagogue. And that's a useful exercise. So now you have a goal, and now you have a understanding where you are. What do you have to do next to get there? Go ahead, John, I see a question. Go ahead.
Electric heat pumps versus gas furnaces. Are electric heat pumps more expensive? I mean, to operate?
It depends on the cost of electricity where you are. In Massachusetts at this time, I would say yes. Our electric rates are not great. If you live in Ontario, then it will be much cheaper to run them on electricity. My goal with all the buildings that I work on professionally is to get everybody off of fossil fuels, because I can't make green oil. I can make a green grid though, and over time our grid is getting greener and greener in the fuel that it consumes to generate electricity. So electricity is our one path forward to non-carbon heating and cooling. And so it can be expensive now. It depends on what your rates are. Gas tends to be very cheap. These days it's going to be very expensive thanks to Mr. Putin. And we're beginning to see some rebalancing in the energy costs, but electricity has in the past been a fairly expensive, dollars per BTU source of energy. The good thing about heat pumps is their efficiencies are like 300% efficient, so you get some sort of equalizing of that. And so with the hyper efficiency of a heat pump system, it works for you. I just recently did an assessment at JCA, and I still think it's going to cost us more money to heat with electricity. But that is a commitment by the synagogue to decarbonize our operations, and that's a thing we're going to spend a little bit more money on. So we'll see. Good question and relevant. Go ahead, Linda. You have another one.
So the question about heat pumps
Yeah.
that keeps coming up in my congregation is how to array the heat pumps so that you have zones for heating and cooling, because parts of the building are not in use all the time. Like the
Right.
school wing can be closed off, the social hall can be closed off. So have you encountered that in your retrofitting?
I think it's a
for heat
really
pumps?
interesting question. Yeah. And I've had an assessment done by a local HVAC installer for the congregation, and I think our strategy right now is we have a number of systems in place. We have 3 or 4 gas burning hot air systems, and we're going to age them out one at a time. When this one goes, swap it out, and just kind of do an incremental replacement. We don't do everything today. We're never going to get there if that were the standard. What we're going to do is find the dying ones, and instead of replacing them with and investing in fossil economy for another 30 years, we're going to replace it with a heat pump as we go. Heat pumps are very good at low-level constant heating and cooling. They like to be set at a temperature, and then they do their thing, and they do their thing. They don't respond quickly to radical setbacks, and so I think the base load condition, let's keep the whole building at 55, could be done by a heat pump. And then if we have a gas furnace that's still online, because we haven't come up with the cash to replace that yet, we use that to kick that up for services on Friday night. Okay, it's 55, 55, 55. Maybe we have this thing we can use, and let's use it to its best advantage. Use it where it's good at. Rapid heat, a lot of heat, go for it. Make everybody comfortable on Friday night, and then turn it back off again. And then we're back to heat pump, baseline, 55 degrees. Heat pumps can also be, zoned with, mini split heads on the wall. We have a small sanctuary space, so we're going to put a mini split in there, and that's very inexpensive. It's going to cost us under 10 grand to do that, and we can take that whole area off of the central heating system. We're just going to, turn it off or damper it down or chop the duct off or something, and then that thing gets to be a little bit heat pump driven. And so, it can be a piecemeal strategy, and you can work on phasing it in. It will help, if you have a green team, to have them to get in conversation with the kind of folks that will do the work. Heat pumps are a lot more common these days than they were when I had my first one installed in 2008. Now everybody and their brother seems to want to install a heat pump for you. And there are good resources on the internet to figure out how to do that and who to do that with. I always look for, we have a lot of Mitsubishi installations around here. A Mitsubishi heat pump is a very common system, and Mitsubishi has diamond installers. They've trained them properly to do the work. I always look for a diamond installer. Fujitsu has a similar kind of thing. And so go for the cream of the crop, look for the top of the class, and engage those people to say, what would you do if you had this building to figure out? Yeah, Fred, thanks. Also, someone with some engineering expertise on your green team would be a great help. Again, find allies as you go. I've engaged with an HVAC installer to, have them. They want to sell us some gear. I've got a proposal for 8 different objects to buy, and each of them is designed to do one thing. And I let them tell us what they thought would be the right solution. I think an honest engagement with an HVAC installer that comes well recommended, I take their word for that. Even in the work that I do every day, we don't have to do everything all ourselves. But see what they would recommend to you. How would you best heat and cool this building? And then you take that back to the green team and say, which of these things do we want to start with? Where would we go next? And then they go to the trustees and say, well, we're going to need $20,000 next year. and 30 the year after that. So let's start setting aside money for that. But if we can do it as part of an aging out system so that the dying systems are replaced with new, fresh, non-fossil systems, I think it's a good strategy. I think it's a long-term strategy. We're not getting bound to land wars in Europe. So that's good. Let's go back at the risk. I'm going to talk too much at the risk of answering your questions. I don't want to neglect the task at hand. Back in instructions, where are we? I'm going to put my Zoom screen to the side. Enter the house of worship, done. Add utility provider, number 3. Add utility providers' names at the top of the tabs. Across the top, you can see I have gas provider. There's a thing. Oh, let's do this. This is a little bit out of order. Number 4, blue cells can have data entered in them. We've kind of tried to block off all the areas of the sheet that you don't need to wander into. We've done some, all these formulas are built into the sheet, but when you see a blue cell, that's a place for you to have input. Electricity. National Grid is our electric provider. The meter number. Why do we need the meter number? Is that going to do some communication with the internet? Or we're going to No. The meter number is your gift to your successor. Because if we can compile all this information in one page and say our provider is National Grid, our meter number is this, our account number is this, when that person, in 3 years needs to go and call and get the 2025 data from the utility company, they have all that information on this sheet together. You can do them a favor and you can go home and rest easy. The other cell up here on this page, for instance, serves all. What do you mean all? Which area of the building? Our electricity, we have a separate meter for the inside. We have a separate meter for the outside lighting and the utility on the site. So it's just a way to kind of keep track and get our head into what job is each of these things doing. In the gas tab, we have the same. We have a separate gas. We have a propane tank. That serves the kitchen. Our gas, we have one meter that serves all the furnaces, another one might serve the hot water tank or something like that. It's just a matter of like trying to be as clear as you can for the person who picks up this work next. And then as we see down here, this is where we do the grunt work of benchmarking. If you don't have data from 2016, ignore 2016. Scroll down, we gave you enough years to get you all the 2026. You'll have to come back before then to do a refresher and get the new spreadsheet by 2026. But in here, January. And what are we looking for in this? Dollars. January, $2,000. How many therms? We're on the gas page. A therm is a measurement of gas. If you have another measurement of gas, sometimes people have CCMs, hundreds of cubic meters of gas instead of therms. My email is in the chat. You have to write to me and say, give me the conversion thing. We did a conversion once for a synagogue already. And we kind of crunch those numbers for you, and then you just come back and paste them all in. How many therms did you use? 2,000, $1 a therm. Okay, great. You did a month. Now you're underway. You do that 12 times every year until you get a year of data. Suddenly you're going to start to get out here in the charts, you're going to get population in the charts, energy costs, carbon emissions. The spreadsheet is doing the work to say what 2,000 therms of gas emits in terms of carbon, 11.7 tons of carbon from those 2,000 therms. Now you're going to get to see progress. If we went into gas and we did this and we said, oh, January, we're going to use $1,000 and 1,000 therms. Cool, let's go back and look at our chart. Oh, look, now we see a decrease. It totals up the year. So as you begin to populate the months of the year, it's going to give you more and more data in your charts. Here's the little tabs we talked about. I can drag this one over and say, oh, this is the year that we insulated. Oh, this is the year that we did our LED lighting, that year. And you get to kind of put them in there. It's a little clunky, you can see, but we're trying to give you the agency to kind of make a chart that really reflects the successes of the work that you've done. You're going to see data like this down here. I don't know. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. But down here we see these like, oh, a little caution triangle or something like that. This is incomplete data. It's trying to divide by 0 mostly. But when you see those, don't be too alarmed by them. Unless they're everywhere and you've already done your homework and there's something broken in your links, then you write me an email and we'll come figure that out. Send me your spreadsheet and we can sort that out for you. But I see questions. Linda, is anyone using carbon emissions recapture? I don't exactly know what that means, except in theory. You want to say more about that? Teach me about carbon recapture.
No, I mean, I know that it's possible. I don't understand technically how it can be done, but
I don't exactly either. My understanding of carbon recapture, or CCS, it's one of those things that happens at a utility level, and they're scrubbing the effluent of the fossil stacks as it's burned. They're crystallizing some of that carbon. They're taking it rather than emitting it into the air. They're capturing it in the stack, and then they're going to bury it. It's like the old nuclear power problem. They're going to stick it under the ground in Utah somewhere. They're going to take this carbon, they're going to capture it, and they're going to store it somewhere and hope that it never creeps out again.
So
Fred, you want to speak to?
Jump in. So there's a whole realm. I mean, we do know one technology, one way to get recapture happening, and it does happen, and it is the predominant mode of how we got to here, which is vegetation.
Trees.
It is trees. It is trees. And so perhaps, Linda, are you possibly referring to offsets? Is that possible?
No, I'm skeptical about offsets too.
Thank you.
As much as there's not enough space on Earth for all the trees that would be needed for offsets, but no, it's just what Andrew was talking about with the recapture from a power plant.
All right. I see. So in that case, as you can imagine, whatever recapture happens at the power plant site is reflected as in the numbers that Andrew's about to show us as to how clean your local grid electricity is or isn't. That's what we're about to see.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. So thank you, Fred, for the nudge. Keep going, Andrew. Stop getting sidetracked.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Utility providers' names and account numbers, fill them all out. Then you get your utility cost use and cost data, the units of consumption, and the units of spending is dollars. You put in kilowatt hours or therms or gallons of propane, whatever it is. All the blue cells begin to get filled up. I think what we're going to do, number 5, after that point, you're done with 4 of 6. And by that point, really, truly, the bulk of the work has been done. Find degree days for your location. This is our attempt to normalize for what happens in the weather. Degree days is a difference off of a 65-degree day. How many degrees off of that day was today's average temperature? It was 70 today. Oh, that's 5 degree days difference. And what it's most useful in heating climates for us in Massachusetts, today it was 12, average of 12 degrees. So that was a real challenge because we needed to heat our buildings up from 12 to 65 degrees on the inside. And so degree days tell us location by location by location how cold your winter was or how warm your summer was. And it's an attempt to acknowledge the fact that you're going to use more energy to heat a building when it's colder out. So we're trying to get some sort of, on a given day or in a given year, we don't want to get credit for if it's a really warm winter and we didn't use a lot of heat. Well, of course we didn't. It was really warm out. We didn't need to do a lot of heating. So we want to begin to normalize this data to say year after year after year, how are we doing? How's our building performing rather than how warm was it out today? Degree days, there's a tab at the top for degree days information. And where it is, number 9, here it is. There's some directions here. I won't go into it. There's a website to click on. You put in your zip code. You click on the website. You tell it what years of degree days you're interested in. It totals them up for you. And then you copy them and you paste them into this page. we're interested down here. These numbers, total heating degree days, total cooling degree days, those are siphoned off and used other places in the spreadsheet. So you can help to understand, is your building having an easy year or is it doing really good work in a really hard year? And if I can do that for you. If you have a trouble getting the right data makes sense, send me an email. I'll help you work through that. The last thing we're going to do is, to account for renewables and for regions outside New England, make the necessary adjustments on tabs A, B, C, D, and E. We're cheating a little bit here. We dumped a lot of work into number 6, but it's not hard work, so you're okay. You just click through renewables. How is your congregation interfacing with renewable energy? There's the decision tree down here at the bottom that says if you bought it from a utility and it does this or this or this, do I enter the number here, or a yes or a no? How much do I do? This is a bit of a complicated piece that we can help you walk through as well. There are a lot of possible variations. The JCA.
Can I jump in, Andrew? Is anyone here using solar already at the synagogue?
On-site solar.
No? Hey, makes today simpler.
It's easy. I know, we buy ours from our utility provider and it's called green, and it has, it's 80% renewable or something. And so this page kind of talks you through how to get credit for that when that's what you're doing. On-site renewable electricity, this is where you would input data for if you were generating solar electricity on site. This page is important and a little bit intimidating at the start. We're looking for input in the blue sections. We want to know the region. We want to know the CO2e, that's the carbon dioxide equivalent in pounds per megawatt hour for your electric grid. This is an electric grid. How green is your grid? This is the page that tells us that. We have a slot for Canadians among us, and this one is white. It's calculated for you. So we look in this chart, a little geography, where I'm in New England in this green NEWE. So I type in NEWE here. I use this chart for lookup. If you're in Minneapolis, you're in MRO. Okay, in MRO, I would type a different number. I would type MRO in here. MRO West is 1,249 pounds per megawatt hour. I type that in here. It tells us how green the grid is.
We've got Ohio, Illinois, and Maryland.
So Ohio is RFC West 1174 pounds per megawatt. That's nearly twice as much carbon as the New England grid has. Not your fault, but something to be worried about. If you lived in Ontario, there's like hardly any carbon in their electricity because it's all hydropower. But we want to know, and this will tell you, if you have a very high carbon electric grid, then reducing your electricity may be your primary drive. If you find that your WECC Rockies or your SERC Midwest with 1,600 pounds per megawatt hour emitted, that means your reduction of electricity is going to be very valuable to me. Maybe that means that your first step is LED lighting, because I can reduce half of our electric load. I might get a lot of benefit from that. So you want to punch those two, maybe either do Canadian or US version, put those numbers in there, and that's going to translate the amount of electricity you use into the amount of carbon that you emit per unit of electricity. Does that make sense? Any questions? We're at 12:52, and so I don't want to lose track of time. I'll stop showing things at 1 o'clock, but I am available if you have questions and want to stick around and ask other things. We can get into it more, but we do want to be respectful of folks' time. If you've allotted an hour, we'll get you out an hour and we'll show you as much as we can. In here, tab D, we're down in the A, B, C, D, E, F section. Tab D, there's instructions at the top. No data is required for Massachusetts users. But if you're from other places, adjust electricity line B down below. This sheet interacts with other sheets. Electricity line B. Where's electricity line B, Fred? Oh, down in here. It should say electricity line A.
Yeah. So B would be only if only use. I mean, the default is 0. Change those all to 0 because you would only use B if you know or want to project change in how green your grid is going to be over the succeeding years. And this whole question of how green your grid is I think you explained it well, but it is hard to grasp. And if people leave here with just understanding that, it'll be a lot. So if anybody has questions, now is a good time to ask about how green is your electricity. That's really important.
That plays into the advocacy piece, right? Where you're advocating.
It definitely
for
should.
Absolutely.
Definitely should, but the reality still gets plugged in here.
Yeah, so here's that number, 0.528, coming from over
John
here.
or Barbara, I don't know if you have questions about that, how important that is, and that it's going to be behind everything you do as you plug in the numbers.
No.
Barbara, you're muted. There you go.
Yep. I don't have any questions now. I think my co-chair has gone through this process, but this is helping me understand, much more, and I'll be able to talk with him about it or see how far we've gone on the whole strategy.
Yeah, that's great. You're already underway then.
I think so. Fred might know, but.
So I'm going to look in the archives, see if we do have some submission. So by the way, at the end of all this, when you get at least 1 year done, we'd love for if you share it with JCAN. Love it if you share it with JCAN. We'd really appreciate it. So I'm going to check in the archives. I'll get right back to you.
I just wanted to make a pitch, and for the other folks that are here representing congregations. Do you know, I'm asking JCAN folks, about the Department of Energy grant program that was embedded into the Infrastructure Act that has millions of dollars set aside to help nonprofits and faith-based organizations become energy efficient?
Now, if you're talking about direct incentives in the IRA, and that there's a whole lot that in the IRA, but the direct incentives are humongous. You're right.
No, this is a grant program. It's not the tax benefits. This is a grant program, a competitive grant program.
Okay, then I'd be interested, but just to finish the thought, just so everybody knows. So the difference between last year and next year is 30% right off the top. If your congregation wants to go solar or heat pumps, at least, or ground source heat pump, you will have a 30% reduction in your cost. It's amazing. Okay, so Linda, you are saying something else.
Yes, IPL sponsored a webinar last week. There were almost 1,000 congregations on it. This competitive grant program, DOE has a request for information out. The way that it's going to structure the grant, how it's going to evaluate applicants, cost sharing, everything about it. And it looks like a really great opportunity, but it might be something, if you wanted to give public comments, since you're working on this and you know what congregations are struggling with, I would maybe think JCAN would want to provide public comments, and they're due by the 22nd.
Okay, good to know. And just if you could email me what information and or link you think I should start with, that'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
At the TAC, yeah.
It's in the, I put my direct email in the link in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd be very interested in that. I need $300,000.
Most you can get is $200,000.
Well,
And right now they're talking about a 50% cost share. So really they're looking at, if they give you $200,000, they expect you to pony up on $200,000. And our public comment will be, you've got to be kidding. I could give you in kind, maybe 2,000, but half of it, no, not going to happen. So.
Well,
this is why. So Andrew and I have been toiling, in each of us in different aspects, but in the clean energy field for many years. This is why one of the many things that needs to happen is we need to clone ourselves times thousands. The people that have been working in the field for the last decade, we have to by thousands, so that you have not just one, but a few people to choose from right there in Maryland as to the people to hold, the experts, professionals to hold your hand. And yeah, okay.
all right, I'm going to click on the last of the ABCDE tabs, and we're at 12:59. So I'll make it quick. Again, look for the blue. What information are we looking for in the sheet? Region, energy intensity, division, New England. Over here, the charts. If you can get them, here's the census region by division. I'm in the Northeast. The Northeast, 41.5, 42. Division, New England, the New England version. Q, that doesn't really help us. Q means we didn't get enough data on those things. But this tells us the energy intensity. This is the competitive portion where we understand that houses of worship in the Northeast typically use 42. What's the units on this? kBTUs per square foot. It's right up here. It's the energy intensity, or the EUI, energy usage intensity, measured in kBTUs per square foot. And that tells us whether we're doing better or worse than similar buildings in similar regions. It's just to keep us on our toes a little bit. To be clear, the Jewish community of Amherst uses like 60. So we're already behind. We have a lot of challenge to rise to, a lot of opportunity to get better than we are and to catch up with the nearby houses of worship. But it's some perspective for you. And if you're already doing great, or you get to the point where you're top 10%, then you get to pat yourself on the back even more. And that is the end of the 1 through 6 instruction on how to do it. Your summary page will get populated. We'll begin to see, just for my threw in a couple of numbers over there, we begin to see the emissions pounds out here. And then this table will populate year by year by year as you complete the data. Here's that 42 is showed up here. Are we better or worse than average? And down here it says, we give you another bit of kind of layperson idea of what benefit are we doing. If we populated all this data, it would take 10,000 cars off the road if we decarbonized our synagogue entirely. Or how many trees would we need to plant to reduce the carbon impact of our building, and give you a real visceral feel for us. For us, it was 150 trees each year we'd have to plant to negate our carbon emissions, or to pull that carbon back out of the atmosphere. It's really useful and really concrete kind of information to look at. Our JCAN alum committee took that number and ran with it. So what if we planted 150 trees this year? Well, let's get out there and do some trees. But just little ways that we're trying to give you to move the ball down the field a little bit, if we can pardon a sports metaphor. And I think that's 1 o'clock, and I will stop pointing at spreadsheets and take any questions you've got.
I need that for my call with.
Anything else came up for you, or other things you'd like to see or dig in a little deeper? There are enough of us here, you can just shout them out. You're saving up until you write me an email later. John, you've been quiet lately. Anything?
It's a lot to take in.
Yes.
So can I ask, do
Do
you
one
see
piece at
a,
a time.
exactly,
Yeah.
do you see a starting point, John?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that as we get further into it, that's when the questions, that's when the emails will start getting sent. To just, I think in the actual doing is when the questions will really come up for me.
Absolutely.
And also, like, we're understaffed right now, so I can't even get our admin to work with us until we get fully staffed. So I've got a little time to sort of wrap my head around it.
Mhm.
So can I jump in with the workaround for that, Andrew?
Yeah.
So Andrew mentioned it earlier, but you could do as follows. So your inputs are electricity, obviously from the utility company, right?
Yeah.
Gas for heating.
Hmm.
Okay. And do you have anything else like oil, propane?
No, neither.
No. You only have two sources of input,
Mhm.
and you know the electric company. Do you know the gas company?
No, I know. I've never looked into that.
So it could be one and the same, by the way. But anyway, the approach, the workaround goes like this: you find the phone number just by Googling for commercial accounts, and you just call up on the actual telephone, and you actually talk to and you actually say, pretty please, I would like 12 months or for 24 months, and it should be full calendar year, 24 months of usage and consumption and dollars. And the answer could be, as after you say that simple sentence, pretty please, the answer could be, what's your email? I'll send it to you. It could be that simple. The much more complicated is not much more complicated. They might say, you have to talk, only the vice president or whatever, the treasurer can ask for that. And then all you got to do is ask the treasurer for the permission. So anyway, so that's the workaround, and it's simple because, as Andrew said, it's the one source. The one place where the data is, and the to get us over the kind of hump that we might have, people make these calls all the time. Nobody makes it for your congregation ever, maybe, but people call the utility company all the time with these kinds of questions. They're used to dealing with it. It's just that we're not. So is that helpful at all, John, to hear that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Good. I don't know if there are other people with other good questions like that. I will say, let's see, Barbara. So in Cleveland, the West Temple, yes, you're right. There was activity. I looked in the archives, and let me tell you what it looks like. What I see is a couple of different rounds where I went back and forth with someone. I'm not remembering right now, and there was
familiar.
what's that?
Ken Dunn.
Yes, Ken Dunn, right. And this was back, the date was, where'd it go? Sorry. Last year, I just had it.
Is Ken the one that had a funny gas number?
There was something that needed working on. I without jumping back into it, I couldn't tell you offhand whether we solved and resolved or still needed work. I don't remember.
Okay. I'll be talking with him very soon, so I'll check.
Great.
Okay, but it's very cool to think that two people in one congregation are getting familiar with the same tool. As Andrew said, we all have to hand off the work at some point. So, that is that what's happening here? Is a handoff?
No, he's much more competent with this type of work. So,
Don't let him tell you that.
but I'm trying to get a little more educated about it.
Good. What did you just say, Andrew?
Then don't let him tell you that. What, you can type numbers in a spreadsheet? That's not competency. That's just practice.
What are we saying? Anybody could do this work?
I think anybody can do this work. With a little coaching, a little guiding, a little practice, anybody can do this work.
It is not beyond you. That's why Fred started.
It's not beyond you. Somebody told me that once.
So I will say to all three of you who might still be listening, that everyone sees this as a huge mountain to climb. Everyone at the beginning. It looks like a lot. It looks complicated. And Andrew's not telling you that it's not complicated, but the actual work, once you get going, is super simple, and it's super satisfying when you get to the other side of it. The unfortunate thing is that Barbara or John or Linda, if you are the one that climbs the mountain and gets to the top, yay. Andrew and I would love it if you then did the next 10 synagogues, but you're only members of these synagogues.
And you clone yourselves, and then.
But the good news is that then in the subsequent year, you're that much more confident. You know how something goes. It's first time you do it takes this long. Next time it takes 60% as long. Next time it takes half of that, etc. So you get better and better.
Well, I hope you're right.
This is only from 10 years of experience with this.
Done this before.
Good. I am curious, as long as the three of you are still on, anything else to share about what's going on with your green teams besides this? Linda, you're muted.
Sorry. I just had an email exchange with our green team, which is recently reconstituted, and they're worried about doing more recycling. And I said, I hate to deliver the very bad news to you, that recycling is a hoax, largely in our area, that it's a feel-good process, but it actually does not, based on what I understand of our recycling stream in our location, does not actually deliver the kind of results that people think every time they throw their yogurt cups in the recycling bin. So we have a lot of education needed for our green team to understand it's great to have these physical acts that remind people about sustainability, like recycling and composting and planting native plants and improving and, not using any kind of chemicals on our landscaping, not over mulching trees, planting more trees, that those are very visible acts that congregants can see that we're doing. But rather than mow a couple of acres of ground that we own, why don't we put a solar array, cover our own costs, and send it back to the grid and get credits for that? So that's what I'm dealing with. That's
Nice.
my tale.
Nice. Thanks for that report. That's exciting stuff. I know you didn't think
a real challenge, I think. I think that's, I think for me, when I deal with those kinds of things all the time, dealing with homeowners and we want to green our home, we always have to get that question, like, what is it that you mean? What do you mean you want to green your home? You want to reduce the amount of junk you send to the waste stream. You want to reduce the pesticides infiltrating your water supply. And I think for me, our green team, we did one of the other JCAN webinars about, setting targets. And when we can refocus the green team to be, the pressing crisis of our era is carbon emissions. And when you can say, oh, but we really want to do this new cool recycling program, what impact does that have on our carbon emissions? Can you quantify that for us? And then we'll decide whether that's something we want to spend our energy on. Because if our primary goal is reducing our carbon emissions, because we think the planet is in crisis for that, and it may be not survivable unless we do that work, then Then you can send the recycling people off on their mission to figure out how much does that save, and then you can ask them, does that really save that given our current recycler or their waste streams? And you say, and in the meantime, while we also want to do visible, hands-on, active things that every little child in the congregation can do, we also want to think about, here are our carbon emissions. We have a benchmarking program. We understand how much we can. These also are visible if we put them on the spreadsheet and on the chart and say that I want to focus on this first. I think this is the most critical. I support recycling, and also we need to worry about the climate itself. And if the recycling doesn't affect the climate, well, then it's not part of the climate discussion. It may not. It's landfills are certainly a source of carbon emissions, and there is some impact, but the thing we can do the most is stop burning oil in the trash can out behind our building to heat the sanctuary on a Friday evening.
So this discussion, as you can imagine, is great, and I really appreciate hearing it. And you can imagine that it's reiterated so many times. Linda, this is not the first. I presume it's not the only context you've heard this conversation in, right? Sounds like you listen in a lot of directions, Linda.
No, I was part of the original group in our synagogue that thought if we put recycling containers everywhere and we used sustainable materials for our floors, and we changed all of our light bulbs to LEDs, that there are incremental changes. And then the pandemic hit, and it's like, well, what I'm trying to keep alive. I don't have time to think about our carbon footprint. I'm not even going into the building. What do I care? Now that people have come back into the building, I think they're ripe to hear what the priorities could be.
I think you're right, and I wish you all the best as you make these, as you say, break the news to folks. So I'm not saying that Jewish Climate Action Network knows the exact right course here, but I'll tell you what the course we have taken. And again, this is from working with hundreds of synagogues over the last 10, 12 years. And hearing this discussion, and it evolves. It has evolved, and it continues to evolve, and it should.
Sure.
And I think that's the important point, because you take any individual, they're where they are, and they need to move to where they need to be. Okay, and as Andrew said, we gotta get the carbon emissions. On the other hand, if you think of the big three in most so many households, not every household, but big three of solar on the roof if you can, heat pump heating if you're in a heating dominated zone, and electric vehicles and all those changes happen when you need to make a change, when the heating system needs to go be replaced, or you need the new vehicle if you have to have a vehicle. Anyway, they really are check the box. Once you get through them, you can't. An individual can, if they want, check the box and move on. We think it's an infinitely onerous problem that we face. It is on some levels, but in terms of what we can do, what your congregants can do, it isn't infinitely onerous. It is really doable. And hey, doing this benchmark is a tool to make it doable. Anyway, people need to get from where they are to where they need to be, and our job as Jewish climate activists is help them see that path. I don't know if that makes sense. So what Jewish Climate Action Network has done is we've been big tent all the way along. We've said whatever's green and environmental that brings you here, great. Thank you, welcome, come on in. And then one or another version of, in the last 3 years at least, another version of what you just said, Linda. We've got news for you, folks. Now that you're in the tent, not everything environmental is equal. It's not a democratic process. Carbon.
So I told you that our HVAC system died. So we literally had no air conditioning all summer. And we didn't have heat in the early part of the fall. And rather than
Andrew and I are afraid to ask. Then what happened?
then what happened was the motherboard cost $25,000. So our entire capital reserve was, rather than say, what could we get for $25,000 other than the motherboard of a system that is not necessarily energy efficient? I'm trying to convince them about, could we just forget about the HVAC system and go in another direction that would, help move us into energy efficiency? And the answer was no, we want to invest $25,000 in a new motherboard. So that's what they did. And so I have no idea how long that's going to last, but.
Andrew, are you clear what Linda's talking about? Motherboard?
I know what a motherboard is. I don't know that
It's
my
the
heating system
control
has a
system.
motherboard.
It's the control panel for the HVAC system.
Yikes.
It's basically the brain and the heart of an HVAC system.
I was afraid that's what you're referring to. Okay.
And but it was the cooling system
And heating.
and heating. Well, that's not terrible news, because then if it's a control, it's the brains of the controls, then that controls is likely to be able to take any number of inputs, and so it can control a heat pump system as well as a gas furnace, or as well as an air conditioner as we know it. What I call in the biz like a window shaker. A window shaker air conditioner is a heat pump. It's an electric-based refrigerant heating and cooling system, and we happen to use it only for cooling. The newer versions, the updated versions, can do heating as well.
And
but there's nothing wrong with an air conditioner. A modern air conditioner is a lot more efficient than an old air conditioner.
Oops, sorry about that. Sorry.
But if it can control an air conditioner, it can probably control a cold climate heat pump and give you heating and cooling from the same brain and the same motherboard. So maybe that $25,000 isn't water, or it's not lost.
Do you remember
some cost.
Did you remember hearing a brand name for your HVAC system? Or okay, because
it's an expensive controller. If the $25,000 is the motherboard part of it. And maybe there's opportunity still there, and maybe it's maybe it's nothing more than lessons learned. I was heartened to think that my rabbi pointed the ED at me and said, "This is a guy who knows as much about the energy systems in our building as anybody else. If you think there's a heating problem, now is the time to go talk to Andrew, because that's where I want you to be. I want you to be in front with the solution before they have a problem. So when they say, well, the air conditioner's down again, here we go. What about this? Here's a better solution. It's going to cost less to run over time. It's going to give us better cooling. It's going to give us better carbon profile. We can make use of that $25,000 brain and have it control this better system now that we have the opportunity to do it."
So Andrew, are you saying Linda and team should go forth and find the vendor or the contractor or the consultant who's going to help them get the heat pump proposal in place for that eventuality?
That's what I have in hand, and I'm really glad to have it. We had it done last April because of the part of the green team process and part of looking to reduce our carbon. And lucky me, it happens to be in the executive director's desk, and she pulled it out and goes, I have an estimate of what I said, yeah, do you see that my name is on the top of that estimate? That's what the green team did for you. And now you have the solution ready, and we don't have to cast about for maybe we should go for oil because it's cheaper. No, maybe we should go for the heat pump because it is what we are trying to do here. This is our goal. This is our whole synagogue is pointed at this, and we decided this together. Run at it.
Yes, we did a tankless water heater. We can do this too.
Yep. Yes, you can.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to hijack the conversation.
Not at all.
I apologize.
This is the struggle. This is the things that we do every day. Thank you for
That's
that.
a good discussion. Good discussion.
I sent you the email with the
Thank
info.
you. We'll definitely take a look at it. Thank you very much. And John,
Yep, I
Barbara,
see it. Great.
any reporting about what's going on at your, either at the synagogue level, the facility level, or for congregants, I should say, in terms of greening?
Well,
Oh, go
one-
ahead. Go ahead,
you
Barbara.
want me to? Okay. Not too long ago, they looked into solar for the building and found that it was not based on the right direction for getting more of the sun. So decided, I think, not to go ahead with that. But looking into other sustainability issues and
Barbara, before you move on, do you know how many years ago that was?
it was probably within the last 1 or 2 years. It might have been before.
So I don't know if there's a clear,
COVID. It was before COVID.
before COVID. Okay, so I don't know if there's a clear demarcation here, but it has been said in recent years, if you think solar isn't cost effective for you, that's because you haven't gotten a quote lately. In other words, the cost of solar has come down a lot. The efficiency has gone up a bit. The cost of electricity that you're offsetting is skyrocketing. So whatever the cost effectiveness was, it's definitely a good time to check it out again. Just cast around for a solar contractor or three to take a look. Do you agree?
Okay.
And with the provisions of the IRA, we also now are able to capture the tax incentives that used to be available only for those with a tax burden. A 501c3, a house of worship, can now capture those tax incentives for 30% off the ticket price. And so that changes the equation significantly in terms of and Linda has the grant program also, but if it was just the tax incentive, it's a 30% off sale on solar for congregations right now.
Did you just say Dayenu? I think you said Dayenu. That alone would be enough.
That is it.
It is huge. Okay, Barbara, I'm
Yeah.
sorry I interrupted you, but
That's okay. That's good to know. I'll definitely check into it again.
And
Yeah,
and if your building's pointing the right way, that's great. If the building's pointing the wrong way, we're looking at a solar carport over our parking lot because we have a broken rooftop that goes all kinds of different ways. But if we can put a thing on a pole and cover up the cars, we have less plowing to do in the wintertime because we're in snow country. And we can shade the cars in the summertime. We have a huge opportunity. It's a different cost. It's a different system. It takes real professionals to figure out how to do it. But there are great opportunities there. Or there's community-based solar or off-site solar. If you have a field down the way that you're tired of mowing, how about you put the solar panels over there and run a big fat wire back to your building, and you don't have to do just rooftop solar. It's not your only option when it comes to generating your own electricity.
Okay.
you may regret it, Barbara, but I'm glad you spoke up about solar.
Now I know what to go ahead and do or to check into.
Nudge again.
Yeah.
I've been doing residential design for 16 years, and the price of solar has come down since I started by 65%. We used to say $10 a watt. We now say $3.50 a watt. I mean, it's a huge change in the industry just in the last 15 years.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
And it keeps going the right direction. I mean, this IRA incentives is going to, one of its intents is to generate more solar equipment on U.S. soil. There's a U.S. U.S. only version, and they're trying to gin up manufacturing locally. So, all right. Thanks, Linda. I see you have to go.
Okay, Linda, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
And I was going to say, because of all the above, the line is not going to get shorter. So the quicker you get the contractors to take a look, the better. And I'm sorry, I did interrupt you, but I don't know if you or John had more to report before we have to go.
No, I'm done.
Thank you.
We're in a similar situation. We need to revisit solar. And we do have adequate sun exposure for solar panels. So I know we got some resistance the first time that we proposed it. So we just have to do it again now that the price could be a lot better.
Do you remember? So what try to remind people, it's really hard. Somehow, it'd be a great study to see how this happened, but the general populace has it stuck in their heads. Solar costs a lot. Oh my goodness, what a problem. It'd be nice, but all that stuff. The reality is solar is incredibly, incredibly profitable, lucrative in so many cases, almost all. I mean, here we're Andrew and I are trying our best to be national in scope here. So I can't absolutely make that prediction for Vernon Hills, Illinois. I'm pretty sure it's going to apply there too. But check it out. It's and to get people, but John, you're right. People, it's the only thing stopping this stuff is us,
Mm-hmm.
Getting people over their mindsets. And by the way, so we just had a good discussion on this at another in another context this week. What was it? Anyway, it went like this. And by the way, we have a whole catalog that I call it a catalog of the YB catalog, the yeah but catalog. So somebody was the YB yeah but. So somebody was in Florida and said yeah but, and talking about solar. You want to guess what it was? Yeah but. What do you think?
Too much upfront money.
No, Florida.
What about hurricanes?
Hurricanes, exactly.
Oh, Florida.
Really? What about hurricanes?
And if you're in Massachusetts, the equivalent is yeah, but guess.
No.
Snow.
What about snow?
So the answer in
There's no
both
sun in the winter anyway. Who cares about the snow?
the answer in both cases is not a problem. As a matter of fact, and I need to get back to the Florida person. I'm going to give a presentation to them on Thursday. The hurricane thing, after the latest, really awful hurricane in Southwest Florida. Where was that? Fiona was it? Anyway,
Tampa area.
Right, Tampa area. Thank you. So, but I don't know if anybody else caught it, but there were news articles within a couple of days. Guess who was spared the worst in terms of power outage? The community that
Synagogues.
synagogues. The community that had purposely done solar had the solar, and guess what? As soon as the sun came out, it worked. The rest of the grid was down for who knows how long.
I'm waiting to do Puerto Rico. I'm going to solarize all of Puerto Rico. They have such a failing grid. They're of all people, they need a new grid. They need all renewable grid.
JCAN made a significant effort at the congregation in San Juan a few years ago. Yeah. All right. So John, I interrupted you. What else?
We greenify our events. We use compostables and of course recycling when we have to. We're looking at local ordinances in the municipality in terms of gas-powered leaf blowers and a plastic bag ban. So that's what we've been working on outside the walls of our synagogue.
Cool. Legs and rigs.
Yep.
Yeah. So right. And just to remind you back to what I said at the beginning, this is just one of the three sort of pillars of JCAN. The legislation and regulation is another one, and the Jewish tradition component. What can our tradition teach us about our work? The Clergy Council is the third. So I hope you all stay tuned for all of the above. But John, I wish you the best with if you can get into the spreadsheet soon. It will help carve the path for you. It will show you the path.
Yeah.
There's just a couple of points of input over 24 months. As soon as you put those 24 times 2, times 4 numbers in, you'll be able to demonstrate to everybody, hey, carbon here, carbon there, let's work on it. And then there are things you can do and watch it go down. It'll be cool.
Yeah, I will say too, and part of JCAN Tech Council is, providing a little bit of a, nudgy expertise. I mean, all of us have regular jobs, but if you get to the point where you've filled out 2 years of data, you can say, now I see my charts. I think they look Okay. What would you do next? I'd love to have that conversation with you all too. Write to
Oh,
me and
yes.
say, we have eight different kinds of energy coming into this building. We can see which one is bigger, but I don't know what to do next. What about the kitchen? Everyone loves cooking with gas. What do I do in a kitchen? Well, we've done all electric kitchens, for mountain lodges. We know how to do that kind of thing. And if what you need at that point is like a now what kind of push along the way, feel free to reach out about that too, because we're here with that.
Great comment. Yeah,
Super.
invite us back.
Appreciate that.
Super.
Yeah.
It's 1:33 now, and I'm going to have to go, Fred. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to move on to the rest
Andrew,
of my
great.
world.
Great job. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you
And
so
I do
much.
too.
Thank you, Andrew.
So,
Appreciate
yeah,
you all.
thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Good luck out there as you begin. Write to me later.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
sooner.
All right, thank you.
And send your data when you're done.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.